What is going on to my subscribers and the people who just so happen to find my channel? Guys, this is a quick update on the VH swapped 300ZX. I have finally bought everything that I needed for this build. Here we are, and I have a complete cost analysis, and I'm going to let you know if it's worth it to swap a VH45 into your 300ZX. Alright, so the first thing I ended up buying for the car after we found out that the engine wasn't a blown head gasket, it was just grenaded, it was big boom. We had to find a motor, so I ended up finding a motor a couple hours away. Turns out that motor was a piece of shit, so I'm really glad we didn't go find it. It was in pieces, but I found a secondary motor for about $750. So we ended up going, checking it out. It was in a warehouse, kept obviously out of the weather. Pretty great condition. Nothing wrong with it. It had all the accessories, so we were like, fuck it, let's do it. So we got the engine back to my house, took it all apart, started to clean it up, realized, holy freaking shit, man, like this is actually in really great condition. I even pulled off the valve covers to go ahead and clean those up and paint them, and the valve train looks amazing. Nothing wrong with anything that I saw whenever I took it apart. So then I went ahead and made sure that I replaced the spark plugs. I reorganized everything that I needed to in the shop so I could fit the engine inside so it wasn't going to get dirty. I took off the oil pan. I started getting everything ready to ship it off so it could be either modified or sold because I didn't need it anymore. And now that brings us to the next portion of everything we needed to buy. So we moved on. I decided I want to run a Porsche Cayenne intake on this car. Well, Porsche Cayenne intake sounds like it could be expensive. I ended up finding one on eBay for $100 in great condition. Took some WD-40 to it. Turns out pretty nice intake manifold for what it was. Next, I had to find injectors and a fuel rail. I ended up picking up a fuel rail and injectors for this thing for only $70. Now, the most expensive part of this entire setup with the Porsche intake manifold is actually coming from Performance VH. Eric, shout out to you. Thank you for all the awesome parts you make. Can't wait to get everything all at once, hopefully like tomorrow. Haha. Now, the actual adapters that he sends you, he charges about $1,000 for. All in all, $970 total for that. The next thing I had to scoop up was obviously the most apparent, which was the wiring harness. Now, since I'm running this intake manifold, I made sure I let Eric know in a note whenever I made the purchase that I'll be running the Porsche Cayenne intake manifold because I made two separate purchases, one for the harness, one for the Porsche Cayenne intake manifold adapters. The wiring harness is actually from Wiring Specialties, which I'm super excited for because it actually weighs less than the original wiring harness. And it should be a lot easier to find out where things go. It's all labeled. It's pretty dummy proof. Next, I made sure I got some pressure plate bolts and flywheel bolts that from ARP, but I also went through Performance VH. Actually, now that I think about it, I went through almost everything I needed came from Performance VH. Alright, moving along, I realized that I needed engine mounts now. Well, Performance VH also sells Z32 engine mounts. They've also got universal engine mounts, but unfortunately, they were sold out of that. So what we're going to have to do is probably play a guessing game on how shit is going to fit. But we'll see what happens. I'm really hoping it just drops right in. So within the same purchase, I ended up buying the oil pickup tube. Little did I realize, you actually have to send off your oil pickup tube to Performance VH so Eric can then modify it. So we went ahead and did that. That cost me about $175, not including shipping. The engine mounts, if you don't do the universal ones, you specifically do the 300ZX ones, they're about $275. Now, another question I get a lot is about the clearances for the oil pan. Well, you guessed it. Performance VH has a pre-welded oil pan, which is freaking sweet, for about $475. And yes, I 100% forked that shit out. So the last couple things that I have to list here actually come from excessive manufacturing. So I ended up buying their excessive transmission adapter from VH45 to Z32 for $455. And then I also bought their excessive alternator bracket for $150. Now you guys are probably wondering why I didn't go through Performance VH for this. It's probably going to jack up where the engine sits or where the transmission sits. We'll deal with it when we get there. I need to make sure this engine runs good before we start losing our mind about how things are fitting in there, because it will fit in there with some modification if needed. Now, the reason why I went with excessive is because I did not need to actually take the bell housing from the transmission to a shop to have them modify it. What's really cool is it literally just bolts right on the outside and it's good to go. Now, whether the transmission sits where it needs to sit, I'm not so sure about that. But we'll see what happens. I'm not going to lose my mind about it until we get there. Now, the last couple things I ended up buying were actually a brand new clutch and pressure plate from Z1 Motorsports, which is awesome. I scored that on eBay, brand new, still in the package, for about $180. And if you know Z1 Motorsports, it definitely sells for more than that in the store. Also, I ended up getting a Z1 short shifter during their Black Friday sale, I believe. Yes, their Black Friday sale. And I think I scored that for about $140. Well, funny story was, I ended up taking the transmission out after I had already placed the order and it had shipped. Well, the car actually already had a Z1 short shifter. So I ended up selling it, but I have a brand new one now, which is cool. No wear and tear, which is pretty awesome. So the list actually comes out to $4,564, and now that I'm looking at it, guys, that's not including the water pump, the valve cover gaskets, the intake manifold gaskets, the RTV I'm going to need, any of the fluids. I mean, I'm looking at this right now, and I'm just starting to wonder if maybe this was the right move. Yes, it was 100% the right move, and I'll tell you why. It's different. Not a lot of people do this swap. Not a lot of people anymore do this swap. So that's why I wanted to do this. I just like different shit. You know, anybody could go out there and buy a $6,500 VG30 DETT, but I mean, who knows what you're getting? You know, I only spent $750 in this motor. Once I get all of this stuff in, if something is wrong with the motor, I'll just go find another one for stupid cheap. And then I'll even have more parts. So I'm not going to lose sleep over this. Anyways, guys, I just wanted to thank you for tuning in and checking out this video. This has been a VH45 300ZX swap update, a financial analysis, which honestly doesn't really matter to me. I was going to spend the money anyway, either on a VG30DE or a twin turbo one. It didn't really matter. I was going to spend the money one way or another to fix this car. It's all about the ride. It's not about the dough. Never forget that. You guys stay slow and broke. I'll catch you later.